Picture Tuscany in the 12th century. Sunshine, picturesque landscapes, and beautiful architecture. In the village of Cafaggioli, a peasant family by the name of Medici grew bored of the peaceful countryside and decided to move to Florence and start a dynasty. At the beginning of the 12th century, new opportunities were available to the lower classes, and the Medici family took full advantage of these. They started to climb the social ladder, and by the 13th century, the Medicis were second only to the leading families in Florence. During an economic depression that swept through Europe in 1340, the resourceful Medicis took advantage of the bankruptcy of many powerful families and established themselves among the Florentine elite. Around 1360, Giovanni di Averardo de' Medici was born, and he is considered the first great Medici. While he was not the first in his family to exploit social conditions for his own gain, he was the first to accumulate massive wealth that would firmly put the family on the socio-political map. Giovanni was the son of a reasonably successful wool merchant called Averardo. When Averardo died, Giovanni would go on to inherit his father's business and expand it into cloth and silk. But he is most famous for his impact on banking. At this time, usury was thought to be the greatest sin. In the eyes of the wealthy, greed, gluttony, and lust all paired compared to usury, the practice of lending money and charging interest on the repayment. The Bible condemned this practice as it enabled people to increase their wealth without doing any physical work, and making money without toil was seen as going against nature and God. It was also thought that if the lender had more money to give that they did not need, they had no right to ask for more money back than they had loaned. But there may have been another reason the wealthy did not like usury. It gave peasants a way to improve their situation. By modern standards, this betterment is seen in a positive light. However, in the medieval era, it was believed that your lot was fixed from birth, which meant that nobles stayed noble and the peasants stayed poor. A shifting class structure undermined the fabric of medieval society. Nevertheless, the fact that usury was looked down on did not stop it from happening. After all, the concept of banking had been around practically as long as money itself. The Medici family clearly did not have any qualms about money lending. They had changed their status dramatically over the years, and it is not hard to imagine the appeal of making money without toil. Giovanni's cousin, Vieri di Cambio de' Messini, had studied banking and ran several branches of banks, including ones in Venice, Genoa, and Rome. Giovanni and his brother Francesco used their family connections to secure positions in the Roman branch. Seeing that the future was in finance, Giovanni used the 1,500 florin dowry from his marriage to Piccarda Biuri to invest in the bank and become an executive partner. So, if the Medicis were already in banking, why is Giovanni considered the instigator of the Medici's future wealth and power? After 12 years of working for his cousin's bank, Giovanni had gained enough knowledge to return to Florence and set up his own bank, which is where his story gets interesting. After his cousin retired in 1393, Giovanni took over the Roman bank and returned to his hometown. Florence was emerging as an important center for banking in Italy, and the city's currency, the florin, became standard currency across Europe. But Giovanni realized that banking alone wouldn't get him what he wanted. He combined his financial transactions with international trade. He shrewdly saw ways of increasing profit while keeping to the letter of the law, a lot like modern bankers and business people. One of the ways Giovanni circumvented diminishing profit was in his dealings with the church. As the church maintained that usury was a sin, any money loaned to the church had to be interest-free. Giovanni balanced this out by supplying goods to the church at inflated prices to adjust for the loss of interest on the bank loans. But Giovanni wasn't against making other people rich too. He invented a way for cardinals and bishops to receive interest on their deposits without fearing damnation from usury. He created discretional deposits, which was a gift of 8 to 12% per annum, generously donated by the bank to God's earthly representatives that deposited money. However, the bank would need these funds on some occasions, and the donation was under no contractual obligation to be paid. Due to this, theologians concluded that it could not be classed as usury, probably why they made their way to Giovanni's bank to make a deposit. In 1397, Giovanni de' Medici opened one of the first family banks, the Medici Bank, in Florence. He knew that he would not make as much profit in Florence as he had in Rome, but this move took the Medici family from traditional Italian aristocracy and secured their place in the history books. Branches of the Bank of Medici were opened in Rome, Venice, and Naples, and even took charge of the Vatican's finances. But Giovanni wasn't after money. He wanted his family to become powerful, and accumulating wealth was the first step. Giovanni wasn't just a practical businessman. He also loved art and his home of Florence, contributing considerable funds to the city's betterment. His sons Kosomo and Lorenzo would become the founders of the famous lines of the Medici family. Kosomo de' Medici, later known as Kosomo the Elder, followed his father's footsteps to become a great banker and continued building their financial empire. He expanded his father's bank but was pragmatic. He advised his family to be inoffensive to the rich and strong, while being consistently charitable to the poor and weak. Kosomo also inherited his father's love of art and cultivated a tradition of patronage to the arts that would continue in the family after his death. Thanks to the Medicis, we can still enjoy works by Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo. Kosomo's advanced banking practices led to substantial wealth for the family. As well as using this wealth to fund artistic endeavors, they also used it to bolster their political power in Florence. Pope Pius II referred to Kosomo as king in everything but name. The Medicis invented and popularized many modern banking practices. One such method is double-entry bookkeeping. Double-entry bookkeeping refers to the practice of recording both credits and debits using the equation assets equal liabilities plus equity. This simple method of record entry was incredibly effective, allowing the Medici Bank to build a reputation for reliability and help their clients keep a more accurate picture of their financial situation. International trade was booming in the 15th century, but carrying large sums of money around was perhaps even more dangerous than today. The Medici bankers had a solution for this, and they used the letter of credit. A letter of credit promises that the buyer's bank will pay the seller's bank at a fixed time after a purchase was made. Traders who deposited florins in a Medici bank could receive a letter of credit that they could safely carry instead of cash. A bonus of this system is that it allowed the Medicis to make more money through interest while avoiding the theocracy accusing them of usury. The Medicis used fluctuating exchange rates to increase their profits. For example, the letter of credit might agree that pounds would be paid to a London branch at a rate of 40 pence to the florin, but the branch might be able to find someone willing to pay 36 pence to a florin, earning the Medici Bank a tidy profit. As this was officially done through currency exchange rates, theologians could not claim this was a sin. Kosomo's life was not all smooth sailing, and in 1433, some of his rivals accused him of attempting to elevate his status above that of an ordinary citizen. Florence was a democracy, and attempting to gain ultimate power carried the sentence of death. Kosomo was arrested and imprisoned. However, his considerable wealth and ingenuity helped him ensure his food wasn't poisoned, and afforded him the bribery money to reduce his sentence to 5 years of banishment. He took his bank and his money to Padua and then Venice upon his release. The effect on the Florentine economy was so swift and severe that by 1434 he was back in Florence and in the position to banish his opponents for good. Giovanni's other son, Lorenzo, also known as Lorenzo the Elder, worked in the Bank of Medici alongside but in the shadow of his brother. On Kosomo's arrest, he tried to raise an army to free him, and upon his release, he went with him to Venice and joined him on his triumphant return. The Medici Bank dominated Europe and became one of the largest banks in the world. It expanded exponentially and had branches across Italy, London, Geneva, Avignon, and Barcelona. Most of these branches were partnerships under the control of a central holding company, which is considered to be one of the Medici's inventions. However, as demonstrated throughout history, exponential growth often leads to complete collapse. The Medici banking empire was so large that coordination and communication became problematic. Adding to this was the issue of dealing with different governments. Following the death of Kosomo, no other Medici demonstrated the same skill at banking. Kosomo died in 1464, and by 1494, the Bank of Medici, practically bankrupt, was forced to close all of its branches. Kosomo's sons, Piero and Giovanni, seemed more interested in the arts than banking. Piero, known as Piero the Gouty due to his ill health, took over the family banking business and almost immediately called in several loans that his father had let stand. This action drove many merchants to bankruptcy and created new family enemies. His life revolved more around politics, art, and books than banking. He was able to keep the bank running during his time, but the firm grip needed to run this banking empire was beginning to weaken. Piero's son, Lorenzo the Magnificent, drifted further from banking and into politics, art, and poetry. Lorenzo would even boast that he didn't know much about the world of banking, and he proved to be much better at spending money than making it. Lorenzo died just 2 years before the complete collapse of the Bank of Medici. The bank took 2 generations to build and 2 generations to destroy. But that was by no means the end of the Medici family, as they used the springboard of the banking empire to secure themselves a place within the top echelons of Italian society, ruling Florence and Tuscany for generations. 4 popes were Medicis, and they married into the royal families of Europe, with Catherine de' Medici becoming Queen Regent of France in 1560. The Medici Bank lasted for just under 100 years, but it had a profound effect on banking that is still felt today. Giovanni and his sons Kosomo and Lorenzo innovated financial accounting. They managed the fortunes of the church, European royals, and many merchants, and were great patrons of the arts. In the Medici's journey from commoners to kings and queens, the banking skills of these 3 men most certainly played a significant part. To learn more about the House of Medici, check out our book, House of Medici, a captivating guide to the history of the Medici family and dynasty. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.